for the Europeans who live on the other side. Now, before I introduce the panelists, October was like a month full of events dedicated to Western Balkans, but really with short news on European integration and enlargement process. In early October, a summit happened, EU-Western Balkans, organized by the Slovenian presidency, while a week ago, European Commission presented the enlargement package. And I know I'm not sharing any secret while saying that we know how difficult it was for the conclusions of the Bordeaux summit to include the word enlargement. And I think that this is like becoming its felt and becoming a big hurdle everywhere in the region. All the economies are trying to run and still keep the perspective alive. Politicians are mentioning every day that our economies, our countries are Europeans. We'll do our best, but on the other side, the feeling of frustration is omnipotent and present in there. So that said, it's with pleasure that I'm going to listen and then share these opinions and concerns with 4 distinguished panelists, 2 present physically in this room and 2 others that joined us via the so well-known Zoom platform. So Christian Hullmann is here with us, head of Division of Western Balkans in the Federal Foreign Office in Germany. Sylviane Jagot is here with us as well as Deputy Director for Continental Europe of the French MFA. And I see Clive Rumbold, with whom I can share even more memories on the processes of enlargement and economic and European integration of our countries. I know him since he was working in Albania. Now he is senior expert at the Western Balkans Division at European External Action Service. And good evening to you, Clive. I hope you don't have any problems with mic anymore.
Good evening, Mylida. I hope that's working now.
That's very good. And we have Mr. Tassos. So I just have to apologize if I'm not spelling correctly your surname, which is pretty long. Chatsi Vasileu, Member of Parliament.
Well done.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's because Greece is having the chairmanship of Southeast Europe. That's why I'm trying to learn some words. And exactly. The Secretary of the Standing Committee of National Defense and Foreign Affairs and advisor to the Greek Prime Minister. So welcome to everybody. And now we'll start with you, Christian. So we've been working together pretty close, I have to say, is from Regional Cooperation Council and the German Foreign Ministry during the last year, thanks to the Berlin process. In July, you concluded, let's say, the first cycle of 7 years of the Berlin process that was initiated years ago as an initiative of Chancellor Merkel. And I think that despite thick and thin, and it's quite hard to enumerate some successes, even when these successes are small, but I have to say that the outcomes of the processes should start from the very first political one, bringing the leaders of this region all seated together. While there are different platforms running in the region and under discussion. So from your perspective of Germany, being one of the countries, the staunchest supporter of the process of enlargement of Western Balkans. So how do you see the initiatives being present in the region? And what do you think is going to help most the process of the European perspective, maintaining this narrative alive and solid?
Yes, good evening, Mylida. Colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here in Belgrade physically. That's a great chance, and also to be part of this panel talking about EU integration and regional cooperation. Before I start dwelling on the different frameworks and or the framework which I deem or we deem most important, I'd like to just say a couple of words also as to the EU perspective and the difficulties that are perceived here in the region at the moment. First, I'd like to stress that the EU perspective is a reality. It has been confirmed at the Birdo summit. Yes, the discussions were there, but this is natural for any sort of declaration that is being negotiated between 27 member states. But what counts is the end, the result, that the word enlargement, the enlargement perspective is there. And this is the case also because enlargement, EU accession of the Western Balkans 6 is a strategic necessity for both the EU and the region. So this is also the reason why my government is so engaged in supporting the region on its path to the EU. We have, of course, a high interest that the transformative power of the EU perspective is maintained. Therefore, it is clear that it is of the highest importance that the accession talks with Albania and North Macedonia start as soon as possible. Both countries have delivered on reforms, and now it is for the EU to deliver. I'm convinced that it will be possible to find a solution for the bilateral differences between Bulgaria and North Macedonia. The EU, its member states, they are all aware of the high urgency of the matter, so this is nothing that will be sort of put on the shelf and just stay there. But now let's turn to the regional framework. If you ask me, Linda, what I think is the most important framework, you won't be surprised to hear from someone coming from Berlin that it's the Berlin process. It is not because we like the name, but it's because of the enormous benefits this process has brought to the region and can bring to the region. You said it's difficult to name the successes and achievements of the process. I think the list is quite long, and I don't want to bore you by enumerating it, but just to recall the roaming agreement, which has made life easier here in the region, the transport community, transport and energy connectivity, which has seen a boost over the past years, the establishment of the Regional Youth Cooperation Office, a green agenda for the Western Balkans, and this I think is first and foremost an outcome of the Berlin process. It's an improvement of good neighborly relations because of the inclusivity of the process. We've seen this also with Serbia and Albania, for example, having come much closer over the years. We see also that Kosovo is an equal peer at the table of the Berlin process, and that has helped a lot to shape the region. In the Berlin process, so to speak, to take your picture, it takes 6 to tango, which is difficult sometimes. And now, within the Berlin process, we have the historic project of the Common Regional Market, which was agreed upon last year in Sofia by the heads of governments of all Western Balkan countries. This is a historic project which will bring the 4 freedoms to the region until 2024. And this means, in concrete terms, that this can generate economic growth up to 7% for the economies in the region. It will ensure an effective use of the substantial funds of the economic and investment plan of the European Union, which will mean grants of 9 billion and additional credits up to 20 billion. And it will be a preparation for the EU single market. All this together would be a huge achievement. These four important agreements of the Common Regional Market are being negotiated at the table. Thank you also to the RCC, Linda, for the big commitment to these negotiations. The agreements, many of you will be familiar with them. They concern mobility in the region with ID cards, also mobility of third country citizens, and the recognition of academic and professional qualifications. My government had hoped very much that it would have been possible to agree these agreements already back at the summit of the Berlin process in July, or now for the EU Western Balkan Summit in October, because this would have been also a strong signal of unity of the region. Unfortunately, we are not there yet, but I would like to use this opportunity also to encourage all Western Balkan 6 governments to continue to push for these agreements to become reality and to continue the negotiations in a constructive spirit and with the readiness to compromise. Because these 4 agreements, as well as the common regional market and the Berlin process as a whole, they serve the well-being of the people here in the region, and first and foremost its citizens. So thank you very much. This is what I would like to say at this point.
Christian, thank you very much. So I would really like to pick from what you said, but I don't really misuse the time. So we have 4 minutes for a round of questions for each of you. Then, so I'll try if there is any moment or any time left at the very end, then maybe we can discuss or take some questions from the audience, and that might be of interest as well. Well, I would really like to have this panel conversation, like, let's say, a process of discussion. So please do not take me ill if I can add a bit more on the questions that were like already sent to you. So Sylvian, you'll be having the presidency of the Council as of next year. And whenever we would like to take a good example of the post-war conflict and to go back considering on how Europe was built, we always go back to the coal and steel community. So after the Second World War and how the relationships between Germany and France were constructed. So how did you pave through patching the deals and then building the single market and the community of coal and steel and so on? Which I have to say, these are the efforts that this region is trying to move forward. Like thinking that if the economy is stronger and if the region has a deeper economic integration, then there are less chances for conflict or for the nationalistic perspective to be like the chapeau of all the processes. But I was trying to read and then find out the priorities of your presidency. I that you still have to table those. So, but as like the main keywords or in a tagline of the program, I found that it's going to be recovery, strength, and sense of belonging. While we are going from one crisis to another, so today it was a discussion on the energy crisis, then you have problems among member states now with Poland rule of law, and tomorrow, who knows, again, Bulgaria is your problem as well for the moment, because we are not having any progress in the process of European integration, because there is a problem now between Bulgaria and North Macedonia. So my question is quite simple. Is Western Balkans going to be a priority of your presidency next year?
Thank you, Melinda, for your question. First of all, I would like to thank the Belgrade Security Forum for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here for the first time in Belgrade, and happy to discover this vibrant city and vibrant population, and happy to talk about the Western Balkan future. So, as you said, regarding the French presidency, it is still yet too early to talk about, which will be the priorities of France for its upcoming presidency. We are still under the Slovenian presidency, so we are very much supporting with our German friends, the Slovenian efforts in order to overcome the current problems that the Western Balkans face. And the last summit in Bordeaux was a very good example of that Germany and France are striving very hard because in the margins of the Bordeaux summit, there were 2 meetings on the side devoted to the dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina, and also another meeting between Bulgaria and Northern Macedonia. And of course, we did not get the expected outcome, but still, it shows that there is a very strong will of Germany and France to try to overcome the current difficulties and have the process dynamic of the Western Balkans. But regarding the priorities, it will be a priority. Of course, the French presidency will cover very wide topics like Indo-Pacific, Sahel, the autonomous strategy of Europe, and so on. But the Western Balkans are already a priority of France. I'm sorry to give, I would say, national examples, But in France, we have developed our own national strategy for the Western Balkans. It is a document encompassing all ministries in France, and it's been adopted 2 years ago. So it really shows that already in France, there is, first of all, a strong assumption that we must work harder with the Western Balkans in order to keep the momentum, and that regarding France, we have to be more present in the Western Balkans. So the Western Balkans will be one of the priorities of the French presidency. And also, as Christian said, the Bordeaux summit for us was very interesting. I believe that the Bordeaux declaration is a kind of roadmap for all of us. It's a very encompassing document, and what I appreciated in this document is that it recalls some basic truths, but that are important to be recalled to everybody. First of all, there is a genuine, sincere, strong commitment of all EU member states to recall that the future of the Western Balkans is in the EU. This is the end target, and we all recall this very basic truth, but you're right to say that sometimes in love, you not only need words, but also proof of love. So it was important to recall that. And also, there were some very concrete examples. I'm thinking of the economic investment plan that was stated in the Bordeaux declaration, and it's a 30 billion euros plan, you know, and it's very ambitious. It will cover all topics, you know, in the Western Balkans, going from the green agenda to connectivity, to health, and so on. And also, I know there were some critics in the Western Balkans regarding the management of the pandemic, of the COVID-19 pandemic. At the beginning, the EU was a little bit slow, but we made up our delay, and the EU is the first contributor with doses, you know, many doses, and the first contributor regarding the money support to the Western Balkans. So we are doing a lot. And also, I would like to say that regarding the Western Balkans, sometimes I have the impression that it is a matter of, if you look at it with a full glass, no, half full glass or half empty glass. You can have the same numbers, the same plan, the same words, and the same projects. But if you look at it from the good perspective, then you can see that the momentum is still here. The momentum is there. And sometimes you can have a look at it from the wrong perspective, and it's a different reality. I think that Germany and France, and if Christian allows me, we are very much committed to that. And President Macron, during the last 6 months, met with leaders of the Western Balkans. He very much himself committed to have regular contacts, and is very much intending to continue to overcome the existing difficulties that you mentioned between Northern Macedonia and Bulgaria, between Pristina and Belgrade, and so on. So, to paraphrase what my president said during the Bordeaux summit, the Western Balkans has an obvious European perspective, and this is the end goal, and we will fully implement the Bordeaux declaration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I have, going back to the Bordeaux summit, you mentioned it rightly, so the conclusions are like a roadmap. Yeah, I can say we are glad as from RCC, but I have to say that we are like challenged, because a lot of the agendas out of that roadmap are the agendas that we are working, and we are trying to push forward as from RCC. So for us as well, that Bordeaux summit has given like a menu, a list of things that has to happen. And I hope as well that all this will bring the region closer to the EU in real and concrete terms. So you said, yes, the region has a future, the European perspective of the region is there, so the future is like there ahead of us. And now I will pass to Tassos. Please forgive me for not mentioning your surname again, so I don't want to really be to be mistaken. So I love to say that for this region, future is now. It's 18 years since you started, and the Thessaloniki agenda confirming the European perspective of this region was like sealed and stamped in Greece. So we are like 18 years after, and we all know the facts. Only Croatia enjoyed. And yes, I have to say, since I have the chance to moderate this panel, so I am even like entitled to share my frustration as well. So next time I'll be seated there, so maybe I cannot do it. So I'm using the opportunity, or not misusing, but using the opportunity. So what do you think? So are you concerned now as being one of the countries next to this region, very close, a neighbor of the Western Balkans? Are you concerned with what resembles like a rising tide of Euroscepticism in the region? And by the way, are you thinking of any Thessaloniki too?
First of all, thanks for the invitation. It's always a very nice opportunity to discuss about the Western Balkans. I'm coming from Ceres, which is an area in the region of Central Macedonia near Thessaloniki. So I'm a Northern guy, I'm a Balkan guy, and I'm a very proud Balkan politician.
Very good.
Here in Greece.
Very good.
And I can tell you that, yes, the Western Balkans are belonging geographically and historically in Europe. Maybe you find it like a cliche because we see this phrase in all statements and in all official documents, but this is the truth. So about the Euroscepticism you asked me before, yes, we are very concerned about that. And even my Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, has been exposing this very delicate issue during the last summit in Bordeaux, in Slovenia, at the highest level. I truly believe, and I will be frank, that the enlargement will be able to have the intergovernmental conferences in order to give the necessary impetus to the whole process. Of course, our Balkan friends know that the integration is difficult and a long-term process. My experience from Greece shows that it requires a painful commitment. It constantly requires deep reforms, and we saw that sometimes our friends in the Western Balkans have not delivered either. But there is no doubt that the whole region belongs to the EU family. And I can tell you that it is not a question of if, it is a question of when. We must not allow Euroscepticism to block our way forward. And I can tell you that there are positive examples that could boost the region's European vocation. For example, during the pandemic, the Western Balkans received considerable assistance on vaccines and resources from the European Union. And this is a good opportunity that shows that there is a very good relation between the two sides. What about the new Thessaloniki agenda you mentioned before? I can tell you that my country, since the Thessaloniki summit in 2003, is constantly promoting this vision and spares no effort to see it becoming true sometime. And we are very proud having the chairmanship in office of the SECP, which is the most important political format in the region. And I believe that its power comes from the fact that our countries have its ownership at a local level. And we truly believe that it should use this so-called legitimacy to debate and solve all major regional problems. And the RCC has an important agenda that the SECP should promote with no delay. So our chairmanship, the Greek chairmanship, aims at exchanging, first of all, the best practices from the functioning of the democratic institutions, the rule of law, and of course, human rights in the context of the European prospect. We don't want, as I told you before, Euroscepticism, ultranationalism, or even xenophobia becoming obstacles to this important path. Besides, we truly believe that we need to work about the implementation of the digital agenda for the region. We believe that this is the only way to facilitate growth, to create jobs, good jobs, which are very necessary in the region, and contributing to greening. And as I'm talking about greening, our very next goal is the environmental neutrality by 2050. And the Central and Southeastern Europe energy connectivity includes the region of the Western Balkans. We believe that connectivity is needed to establish a strong regional market, which will be beneficial to everyone. We really support the expansion of the European Green Deal in the region. And of course, last but not least, Greece believes that we need to support the efforts of Western Balkans to align with the CFSP, as well as participation in the CSDP operations and missions we see. We believe that this alignment should come naturally from partners and friends who share the same values and whose goal is to become EU members soon. Therefore, this is, let's say, the modern Greek agenda we propose for the Western Balkans vis-à-vis the chairmanship we have in the SCCP. And allow me to repeat that the question is when and not if. We truly believe that the Western Balkans should join us soon.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your messages and optimism as well shared here with us. And you already aligned my question and paved the way now to what I'm going to ask Clive. You know that the voice of EU institutions is crucial in this process. It's quite important. You know that by mistake, time after time, when we mention Europe, we have in our minds and visualize Brussels. Definitely we think that all the problems, whenever we don't have like a positive result, comes from Brussels. Then you need to remind people that it's not only in the hands of European Commission or European External Action Services, but EU functions because 27 countries are member states. So it goes up to them. Then the process of decision making is different. Anyhow, Clive, so you know as well that we have been trying a lot during these years to keep this important positive European narrative in the region. And despite sharing the concerns here among ourselves, we always keep mentioning that the EU is the biggest partner and the crucial partner of this region. Whatever and whenever EU was stronger and the relations with this region were stronger, then things moved for better and faster. We can never forget that when it comes in terms of investment, EU is the biggest investor in the region. And some of those investments are done for free. So money and funds that are granted to our region, not only loans. So these are really things that we tend to remind day to day to when we speak about the European narrative and about the rule of law and about the values and Europeanization of our countries. But now, and I have to say that the concept of enlargement is coming like or walking hand in hand with like a closer integration with the EU policies. So the logic that I keep hearing, and it's like present in the region, even from the think tankers, civil society, is like we should work now while waiting for the big day of EU membership. We should work on how to prepare ourselves in facing in policies, like the roaming agreement that Christian mentioned, like the roaming agreement in the Western Balkans. And the one that we are introducing, launching, and it's part of the Bordeaux conclusions, the roaming with EU, is one of the facing in policies. So we try to connect each other, let's say, by being integrated with the right policies, or like the green lanes, or the single payment area that we are promoting. So how do you see the interest of EU on this phasing in? And have you already prepared any assessment on the Western Balkan frontrunners, for example, like Serbia and Montenegro? So how is this process of phasing in policies will be announced?
Well, Linda, thank you very much. First of all, I mean, it's a great pleasure to be invited to speak at the Belgrade Security Forum. And in this panel, under your chairmanship, Melinda, as you said, we've been working together for many years on different things. Albania, and then latterly the much wider canvas that you're now working on in the context of the RCC, in which we're trying to address today. I'll come on to your question in a minute regarding the specific elements of integrating the Western Balkans more closely with the European Union in specific policy areas. But I think before I do that, I would just like to come back to some of the things that have been mentioned and kind of expand on them a little bit. And don't worry, Melinda, I won't be too long.
Please, you have 4 minutes.
I know that you'd like to have more of a discussion after this, and that's going to be great. But I do want to cover some of these elements and to expand a little bit on what some colleagues have mentioned. First of all, the question of commitment. I think it's extremely clear. If you look at what Christiane mentioned regarding the summit declaration from Bordeaux, the important thing is that enlargement is there. It's in black and white. This is absolutely crucial. You yourself mentioned, Melinda, that it's a roadmap. If you look at that statement from the summit, it really shows everything about the relationship, the commitment from both sides, the expectation from both sides, and the importance of the mutual engagement. And that comes back, I think, to something that Tassos mentioned. Ultimately, you know, what is the EU for the Western Balkans? Well, the EU is what completely surrounds the Western Balkans. And that hence our deep geopolitical interest in the Western Balkans. We are tied together not because we decide to make it our policy today or tomorrow or in this presidency or that presidency. That's great and very important. But we're tied together because the Western Balkans are surrounded by the member states of the European Union. So we have a shared destiny, inevitably. And that shapes fundamentally the kind of relationship that we have. It shapes the shared interests that we have that are reflected in the policies that we have. As Christiana said, it's a strategic necessity to integrate the Western Balkans into the European Union because of the shared interests that we have. Colleagues have mentioned the importance of momentum, and I want to come back on that. Clearly, it's absolutely vital to move ahead with the first intergovernmental conferences with Albania and North Macedonia as quickly as possible in order to avoid this sense that the EU is somehow losing its enthusiasm for the Western Balkans. As I've said, the relationship is at a fundamental level one that requires mutual engagement and has to be a strategic necessity for us. And that's at the core of our relationship and why we need to make sure that the momentum is maintained. An important aspect of that is communicating about that. That was emphasized if you look closely at the Bordeaux Declaration. And I think what was interesting there is it talked about not just what the European Union has to do, but what the countries themselves have to do to communicate about their European Union future. This is absolutely critical. Now, you mentioned, Melinda, just now that the European Union provides this, that, and the other, 9 billion here and there, for free for the Western Balkans. Well, this is European Union taxpayers' money, and the European Union is not giving that money for no reason. It is giving it for free because the Western Balkans are future member states. It's an investment in that sense of having a shared destiny. And I think the size of what the European Union provides is enormously significant in that respect. Of course, what we've done in terms of COVID is also a very important part of our engagement. I want to salute the work of the RCC and the SECP in taking forward some of the practical ways of cooperating between the countries of the region, because that's really a precondition for what you mentioned, Melinda, integrating more closely with the European Union. The region itself has to function properly together with all of the things that you talked about, the commitments for the common regional market, you spoke about roaming, all of that stuff, that's critical. We've had, of course, already some very significant success in roaming. We want to take the next step there. But it's all about the other elements, the bits that haven't yet been agreed, the bits that are going a bit too slowly, and that you're pushing extremely hard, Melinda, in the context of the RCC, because that's critical to the region being in a position to benefit from taking part in European Union policies. Ultimately, the menu, if you like, is already set out quite clearly in the economic and investment program for the Western Balkans. You have a list of the different areas which can be looked at in terms of integrating into the single market. You get things like market surveillance, customs, e-commerce, data protection, cyber security. There we get into the wider security cooperation arena, where Tassos underlined, and I think he's right to do so, the importance of cooperation on CSDP and of CFSP alignment. We face common, again, it goes down to geography. We face common geopolitical challenges. These we have to tackle in our engagement, but also in the work that we do to bring the Western Balkans closer to the European Union. There's a whole range of different economic measures that can be looked at in terms of integrating more closely into the European Union. SEPA is one, I think, which would be very close to the people and would genuinely help life in much the same way as the roaming aspect. Value chains, research under Horizon Europe, making sure that processed agricultural products can be traded in an appropriate way. I'm very sad that we can't buy more of the Western Balkans processed agricultural products in the European Union, because they're splendid. And I wish we were doing more trade in that respect. So these are just a couple of the elements. And they are already set out in the economic and investment program. Now, I think, you know, in terms of when these things can be brought in, I think that will depend on two things: on the progress that the countries make as six in terms of getting together and creating a framework where it makes sense to integrate into the European systems in this respect, and then individually how the countries perform in terms of their reforms, because in each of these areas you need to have reforms up to a certain standard for it to make sense for those sorts of integrations to be done. And there we have, of course, as you know, a very well developed framework through the Stabilization and Association process with the Stabilization and Association Council, the committee, the subcommittees and so forth, where we look very closely at reforms and could potentially look at the future steps in terms of integrating further into the European Union. As I said,
I'll give you a second round. So if there are still things left,
you're cutting me off quite rightly. I've been too long. Thank you, Melinda. Just a taste. We can talk more later.
Yeah. So I saw that you were really passionate now on mentioning all the things that are happening, at least during the last 10 years. And that's why, so nobody, as I said, can neglect the role of EU, the important role of the EU in this region, and that's why we are all concerned, and we want this process to be kept alive, and then run normally and within a time frame as well that is like reasonable. So like you said something, you mentioned like the progress as 6 countries or economies. It's like the RCC language. So 6 economies, Christian. 5 years was meant to be the Berlin process, so it went up to 7. Tell me, what are your plans? So what's going to happen with the Berlin process? And so what do you think about this proliferation of regional initiatives? Mm-hmm. Do you think there are few? We can have more. So aren't we performing and we don't have enough for that?
The Berlin process will continue, that's for sure. And I remember back in 2018 when we in the German government were thinking how to continue, because as you said, First, it was meant to go for a cycle because we didn't want to start a series of conferences, which in the end would sort of not have enough substance anymore. But then we learned that there was enough substance, more than enough substance, and that the echo from the region and when 2018 was coming closer was very clear, no, the process has to continue. And from what we hear today from the governments in the region is that this feeling is still the same. So the fact that the German government is now changing, about to change, does not have an effect on the Berlin process. The Berlin process is so important because it is, as Clive also said, it's a positive agenda for the region, and a positive agenda for the region which it develops together with EU countries, with your help and with the Commission. And this will make the region stronger and also more attractive for investments, but also more attractive for the EU also to say that, and speed up EU accession. As to the next German government, I'm not in a position to speak for that. I would also like to know who will be my boss soon. But I'm convinced that the next German government will stay engaged in the Berlin process because the benefits are so obvious. And the European Commission also, President von der Leyen has declared very clearly that the Commission stands ready also to play a strong role. As Gabriel Escobar said in his opening remarks, and this is what we also very deeply believe in, the region should look at the opportunities. And the opportunities are manifold when it comes to regional cooperation. I already mentioned the common regional market, the key project, but there are other issues. I think Tassos mentioned the digital agenda for the region. We have digital summits in the framework of the Berlin process, which are important because for an important region like the Western Balkans with a lot of opportunities in terms of business, also for when it comes to nearshoring, reassuring for EU companies, it's important that the standards in the region, as far as digitalization is concerned, are similar. Because then this will make it easy also for investments from the investors from the EU to go here because they know what the rules are and they don't have to develop something different for every country in the region. And then there's another big agenda where opportunities are big, but also challenges. I mentioned already the green agenda, which is also part of the Berlin process, Birdo declaration. This is also of key importance, not only because of the climate goals, which Europe will not achieve without also the transformation here in the Western Balkans, which are, I'm sorry to say, but are main polluters when it comes to climate, to the climate. Then it's important because of investments and of competition. At some point, ultimately, also companies in the EU, investors will have to take a look at what is the climate balance here for balance sheet for companies when they produce here. Is it in line what they have to match in the EU? And last but not least, fossil energy and fuels are expensive. They receive a lot of subsidies also here in the region and are harmful for the health of the people. So this is something where we feel the Berlin process could be very beneficial. There are obviously many ideas also how the Berlin process could go ahead and what could also be improved. And I think this is an important discussion also for the future. Maybe to throw out some small ideas. Ownership is important, and this is the key thing. But we see ownership of the Western Balkans in the Berlin process. Sometimes I hear an artificial sort of contradiction when I listen to it, that I hear that, for example, people speaking of other initiatives saying, oh, this is the true initiative where we have our ownership. We see ownership when 6 Western Balkan countries sit at a table with our heads of government, or the French President, Chancellor Merkel, and others, and commit to projects. In our view, this is high ownership, and we believe in the commitment that are then pronounced. But the ownership could be enhanced. We believe it's important that in between summits, an active regional policy cooperation at 6 should be pursued by all the governments in the region. And we believe it would be good to have more regular meetings. I'm sorry, Linda, to overburden you. For you, it's not Bildo, but maybe the burden declaration, but it's a lot. But
we'll do our best to meet and maintain our promises. So
okay. Yes, I'm sure. But regular meetings, every, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, be it via Zoom, be it in presence, on the different agenda items like green agenda, the different commitments of the common regional markets and so on, with a strong role of the Regional Cooperation Council and the Commission supporting. Then one could think about having more clarity about the monitoring, about the implementation of commitments that have been made. This is also an issue that should be addressed. Maybe the countries, the 6 Western Balkan countries have ideas how to improve that. Maybe one country wants to take the lead and for a specific issue, and this is just an idea. But there's much that could be done in that respect. And we believe that being present in the region is important. It was a good sign that the last summit before the Berlin summit was chaired by North Macedonia and Bulgaria. Unfortunately, we had a virtual summit only. This was a pity due to the pandemic. But this is also something very important. We feel that the summits should come to the region also to enhance the ownership. So these are just some ways, but I think there's a lot to discover, explore, and to make use of all these opportunities which are there.
Great. So, yeah, we'll be looking forward as well to see when the next round of the Berlin process is going to happen and where. Definitely, and in the meantime, so we know that we have like a long list to deliver. So a lot of things now have been said. So I think we have 20 minutes. So I'm going to use let's say not more than 3 minutes for each of panelists, and then I will no 2 I would say, and then I will open the floor for questions. So. Now, I'm just going to pose one direct question to you, Sylvian. But please, just if you can manage to reply and give an answer in 2 minutes time. So you are going to have the next presidency. One of the biggest problems in EU is this Euroscepticism that we mentioned with Tassos, or skepticism on new countries being member states. So like even a Balkan skepticism, I can call it from this perspective. So you will be really having some difficult months, you know that, not only because of the Balkans, but other problems that EU is facing day by day. But how can you really manage to tell to Eurosceptics in France, but not only so in the European Union, that the danger of not having a clear EU membership for the Balkans is bigger than, and it can even annul sometimes the progress achieved, than the danger to keep the process moving on. Negotiations, chapters to be opened, then monitoring up to the implementation mechanisms in place you already have due to the new enlargement, new methodology. So you have the mechanisms in place. Is there really this kind of rationale that you can use to convince people, listen guys, there we have a group of countries committed to the EU. They are having their own problems, their hurdles, we are having our own. They would like to join us. We had some bitter experiences, yes, we know that, but these countries are going from one reform to another. The bar now is up to here, not even here. How can you convince them?
You mean the Western Balkan countries?
No, I mean the Eurosceptics in EU.
Yes, yes. Okay, thank you for
here
your...
you'll have always a majority of people who'd like
Yes.
to join you. Do not worry on that.
Yes.
So,
as I said before, I think it's a matter of, first of all, to look at it from a half-empty glass or half-full glass. And also it's a matter of communication. I think there is a lack of communication on what we do. And I think this is one part of the Bordeaux Declaration also, is asking the Western Balkans also to communicate internally. And I think we have to do our own homework regarding this, to more communicate regarding what the EU and the member states do in the EU. For instance, one reason why there is EU skepticism prevailing in the EU member states is that Western Balkans are perceived, as a conveyor of menaces and threats, a road for migrants to go to Europe, also a place where organized crime is proliferating and so on. I think we have to show and explain that we already do a lot. And we mentioned, CFSP, CSDP, and I think when I read my notes, I was on the plane, I was very struck by the fact that Western Balkan countries are already contributors, to these CSDP operations, in Africa. And this is something that we don't know in the EU, that Western Balkans are already contributing, to the EU security. And also we don't know the big percentage that each Western Balkan country does regarding alignment, on CFSP position. You have some Western Balkan, all Western Balkan countries together are above 50%. So it means that at least at 50%, they align their own foreign policy on the EU foreign policy. So I think this is a matter of communication. Myself, as a professional diplomat, I had to read my document and so on. So I think there is a work to be done regarding communication. It might sound quite basic, but I think it is a matter of communication. And it is really intended, in the Bordeaux Declaration, that there is a mutual commitment, but also a commitment into the Western Balkan countries to communicate more on what the EU does with the Western Balkan country do. And also, when I mentioned, the half-full glass, I was just, before coming to the conference, I went to visit our own French development agency. They opened a regional office, 2 years ago, AFD, and they are already doing a lot, helping Western Balkan countries to fulfill the climate agenda, to go forward regarding connectivity projects and so on. So I think we already do a lot.
But we have to communicate.
The target is clear. Enlargement is for good. So I think it's really a matter of communication. And doing that more properly, more seriously, I think could help, overcome some EU skepticism, among the EU member states.
Well, thank you. Now I'm a bit puzzled. So, and I need to ask Clive and Tassos, do you really like me to address 2 questions to you, or shall I open the floor and then you take the questions from the audience? So I think this is going to be a bit more democratic, no? So and I see that there is enough interest in the room, but yeah, I see one raised hand in there, but. I hope that you'll have questions for Tassos and Clive as well. So let's give the chance to them. First, I'll come back to you, Florence. So it's anybody's having any question for? No. Okay. Then I'm gonna do the question. So. You had a very good example, Tassos, in trying to avoid the long-standing bilateral dispute to spoil over the regional cooperation. So you had a very good, let's say, a good story on what happened with North Macedonia. So Nikola Dimitrov was here. He just left the room. So how can we really replicate such good stories and that momentum?
First of all, you know that the Prespas agreement was not so good for all Greek people. we truly believe that we needed to find a compromise to solve the name dispute, but you know that at least my party had some severe thoughts about that. But this belongs now to history. Let's move towards the future.
Yeah, just do not mention history. Now we are like having problems here. So please, just find another word.
I will tell you, I'm a historian by the way.
Well, that's good.
So as a historian, I'm fully aware of the Balkan history. And allow me to say that sometimes this region, our region, creates more historic events than the ones it can consume.
Yes, like
and
Churchill said, more political ones.
This is our big problem.
It is.
And I'm speaking as an older tool friend of the Western Balkans region. And I'm sure that as time goes by, all the countries in the region understand that good neighborly relations is the most important prerequisite for the European integration. And I can tell you that the respect of the rule of law and of course the minority rights is also at the forefront of the criteria, and we need to see a little more in this thing. At the same time, it is important that all leaderships in the Western Balkans countries remain open to dialogue. This is the key word. Dialogue is the only method to boost regional cooperation, and we hope that everybody in the area is willing to work in order to solve problems in good faith and, of course, in a constructive approach. For example, the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue is really crucial, and we hope that sometime we will see a very positive outcome out of this process. So it is important, Melinda, to overcome the painful legacy of the past. And we must focus on the European future, because we must believe in this future, because we can believe in this future. Otherwise, there is no point in discussing anything about our neighborhood.
Thank you very much, and thank you for making it within the exact time frame. Yeah, I have one online question. I have one more to Clive, but the question for you, Clive, is pretty short. So on this debate on the future of Europe, is still a room for Western Balkan to participate and give their opinion?
Yes, thank you. I mean, yes, you've heard everything that colleagues have said today, and I think it's enormously important that any discussion about what we're going to do with the European Union includes countries that we have all clearly acknowledged are future member states of the European Union when they're ready. So yes, of course, I think there's an enormous amount of willingness to include the Western Balkans in the discussion. I mean, maybe that just to, and I won't go beyond my time, Melinda, I promise. Just one more point to add to that, you know, was touched on, I think, by earlier speakers, but I think is important. And this is the fundamental political will on the part of the people of the Western Balkans to join the European Union. This is what it's about. They want to join the European Union. So, because they know that it's their future. They're thinking about the conditions in which their children will grow up. The security, the values, the jobs, the economic environment, all of those things. Those are all important to people. And there we get to what Sylvain talked about in terms of perceptions within the region as well. Communication around that. This is enormously significant. But what I want to say is, because this is something which is really about what the people of Europe want, all of them, including the part of Europe which is in the Western Balkans and hasn't joined the European Union yet, yes, there's a clear logic to the Western Balkans taking part in the discussion about the future of our continent.
Clive, thank you. Thank you very much. Now let me just open the floor for questions from the audience. So I see Florian, if I'm not mistaken, there, because you are totally in the dark. Yes, and then I have an online question if somebody else is not really raising any hand in here. And we have like, we need to close in 10 minutes.
Is it working? Yeah,
it's working, yeah.
From Marcel, also French Center for Approachment Europe. Thank you, Melinda. A question for Mr. Gheorghe. So boosting the strategic autonomy of the EU is an important objective so put forth by France. We remember the speeches of President Macron, the idea of European sovereignty. So it is going to be more present in a month to come. Now we understand quite well what it refers to when we speak about Russia, China, global politics, climate change, energy policy, defense. I think France is going to also organize a defense summit. So we understand that quite well. But how does it translate in the grammar of enlargement? How do we apply it here in the Western Balkans? How much specifically this new idea, if it is a new one, will change our approach to the region? That's something I would like to have some insights from you. Thank you.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you for your question. For sure, the topic of autonomous strategy of sovereignty will be a strong topic for the French presidency, and the work has already started. You know, there were already an important meeting in the EU in Brussels regarding, you know, the strategic compass. So it is already going. And also we mentioned at the beginning of the debate how important the region is, you know, from the strategic point of view for the EU, for EU member states. Western Balkans are surrounded by EU member states, and what happens in the Western Balkans is in direct connection with our security. So we have a very genuine interest, you know, for ensuring that Western Balkans, you know, is a net contributor, you know, to our own security. And we mentioned, you know, a few times how important already the CFSP contribution, the CSDP contribution of the Western Balkans already exists. So this is already a very important step. And I believe that during our presidency, it will be our job, the French presidency, of course, with other EU member states, that the Western Balkans, you know, is included in the global reflection regarding the strategic autonomy. We will have a wide geographic outlook to all this, because once again, the Western Balkans are in Europe, in its geography. So we cannot develop a long-term policy regarding very deep, strong interest, you know, without including in our reflection the Western Balkans. And regarding third state actors, it is also a matter of reflection. The cards or the maps, I would say, the cards are moving very, very fast. So we do have to include the Western Balkans in our reflection.
Good. So I hope you are happy with the answer, but then you can continue afterwards. Now I have a question which was given to me by the organizers, so it was sent online. I think it's like an open question for all the panelists, so it's because it's not directed to any, at least nothing as a note here. Thank you very much, Frauke Seebas. Seabus, it's not Seabus, the fish. Thank you very much, everyone, for your interesting remarks. One thing I missed, and which is often the elephant in the room during EU discussions on the Western Balkans, is that since the negotiations are undertaken by governments, they can therefore only be as meaningful as these governments are willing to make them. Civil society from the region and the EU have long been calling for a stronger conditionality to support local reforms instead of supporting stabilocracies. Could you please comment on this?
Can I take the floor, Melinda?
Please. Please, Tassos. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, we need to be frank, and I think that I was frank also before. So the existing accession process has come to a stalemate for several reasons we have to discuss openly. And I have to admit, for many years, Europe had turned a blind eye on local leaderships in the Western Balkans that were seriously corrupted. And yes, do you receive me? Hello?
No, now we do it. Yeah, so apparently somebody was listening to you, so it's not us.
So, I want to be clear again. For many years, Europe had turned a blind eye on local leaderships in the Balkans that were seriously corrupt. And you could argue that Europe failed to give hope to the younger generation in the Balkans that desired progress and prosperity, that desired a better future. And this was, let's say, a vicious circle. Certain Western Balkan countries abstained from reforms, and at the same time, Europe was reluctant to react. But the European Union has provided every partner in the region with a reform agenda that will bring them forward to their accession. And the new enlargement methodology, as we say, gives the opportunity for faster progress, even if it is, sometimes it looks like the process has been made more demanding. So, as you said in the commencement, it takes two to tango. We need, as Europe, to send a strong message, and I think that Bordeaux was a good start 2 weeks ago in Slovenia. It was a positive message, but our partners in the region should move forward. Otherwise, there is no reason discussing again about the European integration of the Balkans. Thank you, Melinda.
Well, thank you very much for your loud and clear reply to this and answer to this question. So I think that by that we are within our time frame, so we are not late. And I don't see any more raised hands from this room, so it looks that we have been discussing a lot. So I need to thank you all for being present here tonight. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Silvian. Thank you, Tassos, for being one of us. Thank you, Clive, as well from Brussels, for being as well one staunch supporter of the integration, European integration of the Balkans. And I think that the messages were quite clear to sum up this panel. So it's a matter of geopolitical challenge to keep Western Balkans aligned with EU and keep the European membership alive. It's of mutual engagement. It's a strategic priority. It's time is important, when is important, not only if. It's an investment in Western Balkans and a shared destiny. These are all the reasons why this process of EU membership of Western Balkans should be kept alive and kicking, and as well this narrative and this perspective as well to continue based on conditionality and less on clusters and the language of chapters, which time after time do not or are losing, just making the process to lose the appeal, as Srdjan Masterovic was tweeting today, and I told him that I'm going to quote him. So thank you very much to everybody who attended, and thank you very much to all our panelists.
One information for all participants, the next address will be at 8:15. So we have like 10-minute break, and the next address will start at 8:15.